review of it, and I think for the board to work off of it, and as they move, like you move forward with the process, we certainly will do a more in-depth review.
I think to your point, board member Scott, if there's any questions regarding the legality of the document, and I think as we're going to go through this conversation, there may be some additional feedback that board members may be able to provide. But before we can get to the point where the board is going to adopt this, I know Mary will be able to do her due diligence to make sure that we're in compliance.
Very good, thank you. And
Thank
then
you, sir.
I'll ask my other questions when we get to those sections. Thank you.
Yeah, and I will also note that it's my understanding that something that we'll be working with you all on moving forward as part of our implementation timeline will be a policy diet. And so as part of that policy diet, these board operating procedures is a portion of that. So it's almost like a preamble piece to this. But I have heard that there's been some work that's been done in the past around looking at policy. So we just look forward to being able to bring all that work that you've done in the past, along with what we are proposing to you now, to make sure we have an effective document for your work. With that having been said, our work is centered around 3 buckets, and we're recommending those buckets as part of your procedures. You all are familiar with listening for the vision and values of the community, identifying specific policies that reflect the vision and values, and then also implementing the community's vision and values. So all of this is centered around that work and the 3 behaviors of listening, identifying, and implementing. Again, all of this is in service to how you all work together and function together as a board, and how you work and function together and with the superintendent as a governance team in pursuit of student success. In this next section, we just acknowledge the legal authority that you have as a Board of Education is granted under New York law. And in large measure, these different sections that we will be going through, we have pulled this from your existing policy manual. So to the greatest extent possible, we've just pulled from what you already have and then just put it in here as a centralized location for you to have operating procedures. Next section in that same regard is just another excerpt and pulls from the legal liability of board members. And so this just reflects your statutory obligation to indemnify district employees, the purposes of education law, and so forth. That is really just ongoing boilerplate from your state code. We continue with that definition of employee. The term includes members of the board, the superintendent, district office, district employees. What you're required to do legally in defense and indemnifying and everything dealing with liability, those are pulled right from your existing policies. And Leslie, please chime in at any time if from your experience, if it's something that you want to make sure it gets highlighted. Now I know it was our, now we
Rodney,
yes.
Rodney, can you let Leslie introduce herself, since we have new board members here as well?
Oh, sure, absolutely, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Leslie Grant. I've been working with the Buffalo Board of Education since you began this work with SOFG, Student Outcomes Focused Governance, in February of 2023, I want to say. So anyway, congratulations to all of you who are in the newly formed governing board. And if there's anything we can do, myself, Rodney, individually as a team, to help you get up to speed on any of the stuff we're talking about, please do not hesitate to reach out. Everybody on the screen who's been here for a minute has our contact info. Thank you, Dr. Mabenga.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to that point, so Leslie and I are part of the coaching team, and then we have a senior coach who's part of our coaching team, that's Cindy Ellsburn. And so one of the things that I'm trying to make sure that to the extent if I use a first name that I'm distinguishing between Council Cindy and Buffalo Cindy. So you may hear me refer to Council Cindy. When I do that, I'm referring to our senior coach who's overseeing all the work that we're doing with you as a coaching team. Just moving forward, the powers and duties of the school board. Again, this first section is pulled from your state code. What we have done here is to give the focus again back to improving student outcomes. So utilize the powers and duties set forth by the state in service of improving student outcomes. The members of the board shall focus on their work on 3 specific duties. Again, listening for the vision and values of the community, identifying specific policies that reflect the community's vision and policies that reflect the community's values. We refer to the policies around vision as goals, the policies around values as guardrails. Implementing the community's vision and values by delegating operational responsibility to the superintendent, and then monitoring, communicating progress towards the vision and goals while honoring the guardrails. So moving forward and throughout, you will hear us continuously talk about superintendent work and board work and how does the board govern itself and govern the district in ways that allow for the board to focus on student outcomes while at the same time providing the superintendent within guardrails to be able to do the work that he and his team are responsible for day to day for operating and managing the district. Board members shall attend official meetings of the board, review and discuss items brought before the board for action, and vote on items legally requiring board approval. All official board actions and decisions will take place only when the board convenes formally. So basic rules there. Role of board members. This is an important area we want to highlight. Board members have no authority over school affairs as individuals. Individual board members or groups of board members do not have independent authority to speak for the board and cannot obligate the board without the board's consent. The board's consent must be specifically set forth in board policy or in the minutes of a public board session. The board is not responsible for or obligated by any promises, statements, or agreements made by individual board members. And we will drill down on this and support this moving forward. But in essence, it is just reminding you that you have authority as a board of a whole. No individual board member has authority over the district, and that you need to be mindful of the fact that if you are out there speaking, that you are clear about that the authority to govern the district rests with the board as a whole. This is from your own processes. You all have board presidents and vice presidents. Obviously, this week you acted on that, elected annually at its January organizational meeting.
Oh, Rodney,
Yes.
one of the board members have a question.
Okay.
Rodney, how you doing?
Fine.
What if that happens? What if a board member takes it upon himself to speak for the board without the board's consent? What happens if that is violated?
So one of the things that as we work moving forward towards where I head up the framework, one, we're going to first of all just continue to support you to understanding that that's not your role and that there are consequences for that. As a board as a whole, you all will have to, we'll work with you, but you'll have to determine what processes that you all would like to follow if you find that, that let's just say if there's continuing violations of the procedures that you all adopt. But right now, our focus is to trying to make sure that there's agreement and understanding around what is good governance and what it means to be student outcome focused. But I'm sure there will be plenty of opportunities as we continue to work with you to drill down more on what is your will, how you all would like to handle should you have infractions, if you will, or violations of the procedures that you all agreed to adopt.
So the board would determine those consequences.
Yeah, so again, these all belong to you. We will coach, we'll make recommendations, but ultimately we want you all to own this work and to govern yourselves. And we're just giving you a framework and a set of procedures of how you can do that governance in ways that are student outcome focused and keeps the board focused on its role and frees up the superintendent and administration to do their job on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I was just speaking to roles and responsibilities. You all know these, but it's always good to, at the beginning of the year, to take an opportunity to just kind of revisit what you have. You all just came from your organizational meeting, so you know the leadership that you have. Dr. Brown just mentioned those of you that are in leadership positions. Just want to focus here on a couple of things. The board president will ensure that agenda items adherence to the agenda calendar and to the monitoring calendar. We'll talk more about the monitoring calendar and the framework, but as you have goals and the superintendent has come up with interim goals, there'll be a monitoring calendar that will allow the board to know far in advance what it is that you're going to be monitoring or reviewing around student outcomes moving forward. And that's what the monitoring calendar is referencing. Also, you're doing training as we speak. There's opportunity for professional development. And so the board president will work and lead the way to ensure that a high quality training plan that focuses on oriented and established and effective governing board is available for all new board members. Also, the president, in collaboration with the superintendent, will make sure that there are governance retreats and governance team that includes the superintendent, and then there's onboarding of superintendents as necessary. And then finally, this is key because it goes right back to what we just mentioned in the earlier section. The board president shall have the same rights as other board members of the board to discuss motions and vote thereon. The board vice presidents or vice president is responsible for assuming the duties of the board president when the board president is unavailable and shall act in the capacity of the board president in the board president's absence. Any questions on any of that? Okay. I showed you the framework earlier. This reflects to board members' conflict of interest. And so, pretty much this just says that board members have an obligation to conduct all board-related business transactions without actual or potential conflicts of interest. Board members must therefore avoid incurring any kind of financial or personal obligation that might affect this. Your judgment and act on behalf of the Board of Education with outside firms or individuals. If you're aware that there are potential conflicts, you should declare those conflicts. And as appropriate, if board members need to recuse themselves from participation in an agenda item because of a conflict of interest, they must declare that in writing to the board's clerk's office and copy the board president in advance of the agenda's publication. Any questions at all on just the concept of board members avoiding conflicts of interest in your service to the district? Okay. Board committees. So this is something that we are bringing forward for your consideration as you move forward. Board committees have one essential role to strengthen and support the board's work as defined by the items that are discussed and are acted upon during board authorized meetings. So board committees are committees of the board. It is important that the board do so because the items directly pertain to the board's adopted goals or guardrails. Items that are not legally required and that the board has not designated as board work through the board goals and guardrails are by default superintendent work. So again, when you hear us talk about board work and superintendent work, we want to make sure that you all are centered around your role around goals and guardrails, and that the assumption is by default that anything the board has not designated as board work through the goals and guardrails are by default superintendent work. Mr. Scott.
Yes, Chairwoman Everhart, is it okay if I ask a question? Just want to.
Yes, go ahead, Larry.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this, the questions that I have really pertain to inconsistencies between the board operating procedures and current board policy. And in no way am I indicating opposition by pointing this out, because in fact, I am very open to the language here with under board committees, but the language here is not consistent with our current model for board committees. And so it would be a change. We would have to change our bylaws to reflect if we were going to go with this language. And one of the things that I think stuck out to me is that board committees, the membership should only include board members. I think that's something that's different from
But
the
it
way
did
we've been
say-
operating.
Sorry. It did say that we can form an ad hoc from the committee, but I kind of did have a problem with the language of 2.5 as well.
Yes, in fact, it says, I think all of the board committees should be ad hoc,
Right.
not standing committees.
Where
Yes.
did this come from, Rodney? Did you get this from policy? Where did this
Well,
come from?
So Leslie, you want to help me with this, but let me say this part first. The concept here is, so let me speak to the first part in terms of alignment with your bylaws. So this is what we are presenting to you all for your consideration, and then we would follow through on working with the board as a whole, or one of the committees, however it is that you all would like to work with us to do this, to update your bylaws and policies to reflect these principles. The principle behind the boards of the committees being the not staff members but board members only. The intention is that these committees, as we started from the beginning, are being established to support the work of the board, and so it doesn't prohibit staff from coming and presenting to the board, or others, if that's the will of the board, to have others to come and present to a committee. But we're really trying to drill down on the principle that as a board, you all are here to govern the district. And so the committees of the board are just that, which may be separate from committees that the superintendent may establish, or for whatever reason you all may decide to have an ad hoc committee put in place on a temporary basis. Leslie, would you like to add any more to that?
Yeah, sure. Just in response to the question of where this came from, through the work of the council with the development of the student outcomes focused governance framework, there have been over time, like some sort of draft policy, draft documents. One of those documents was shared in our cohort that you all participated in, several of you participated in, for the Joyful School District. That was our district. But this comes as sort of model policy around your board committees. One of the processes that we would encourage you to go through, if you do want to become more focused on student outcomes and you do want to, keep your board moving forward in this direction, is to make sure that you go through a process called a committee diet. I think Rodney recommended or talked about a policy diet, and there's a committee diet, there's an agenda diet, and the purpose of these terms and the purpose of this work is to really take out, like, what are you spending your time on, right? Where you spend your time, that reflects your values, that reflects your focus. And what are you spending your time on as a board? And what are you obligating the administration to spend their time on as board members? When you gather, you obligate administration time as well. And so what we're trying to get you to do is just step back, look very clearly at what are we spending our time on, like just put it down. If there's not something that's, we want you to maintain every single thing that's legal. If there's not something that's legal, something that's just been created over the years, we just want you to be open to taking a fresh look at that. And so again, the idea for this language comes from a best practice in terms of a board that is very healthy in their work, that is very focused on keeping the main thing, and not getting overly engaged in the work of the administration. So
There's
One more quick question on this. Leslie and Rodney, you're both working with Rochester. Do they have
neither of us are working directly with them, but
Oh, okay. Okay, then
Yeah.
you wouldn't. I was just wondering if they have a standing committee structure that similar to what we have.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, we can find out if you need. But another thing is really look at what y'all are doing. Like, be very focused on what y'all are doing and what you can do, and try to be the best iteration of the Buffalo board that you can be. So I know that they're doing this work. They're working at a different pace than you guys, and y'all are going to be, But I would tend to just let's really focus on where Buffalo can be. Y'all have new leadership. You have new board members, and I think you could really get, through some of this change work very, in a nice time frame if you want to.
Yeah, and there's a lot of governance research out there that indicates that oftentimes where there's board committees and staff involved, it can cause challenges where the staff gets confused about are they now unintentionally receiving direction from the committee? How does it reflect or impact the board's relationship to the superintendent, where we're going to be continuing to coach you and support you in delegating to the superintendent's work and board work to the board, and even as we referenced in the last paragraph under this section, if you think about your budget, your resources, and time, sometimes just from legacy, and I've experienced it too, that staff members can be pulled into these board committees where they may not necessarily be actively engaged in discussion or bringing anything to the table for the committee's consideration. That's time that those staff members are taken away from whatever their focus duties are for their particular areas, or that the superintendent may have intended. And so you'll just note that in this last statement, we're just trying to make sure that you're mindful of the opportunity cost of your staff members for all the amount of time that they may be spending caring to or attending your committee meeting. They could be supporting teachers in the classroom, principals in the buildings, or whatever it is that their responsibilities are on a day-to-day basis.
We have a question, Board Member Rodriguez.
Is it okay if I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, fantastic. So I appreciate it, Rodney. It's nice to meet you. I have a question. So as I was reading through the document, I see a lot about what we can't do. So in regards to the board committees and not having public participation, can we add some substance about how in best practice we're to report what's happening in the board committees to the public, and or whose role that is? Because I hear a lot about us governing and that like our roles are very fixed, and I understand that, but here in Buffalo there is a very healthy appetite to know what's going on. And I know I reviewed the section at the end about talking with the public or public relations. I'm not sure what the subtitle was, and it said TBD. So like one of my thoughts as I'm reviewing the documents is even if nothing remains changed within the document, how are we supposed to be communicating the nuances of board committees and what's happening in the board committees? And can we get some guidance on that?
Yes. So thank you for the question, and nice to meet you. What you'll find is we will, ultimately we will bring everybody together for a 2-day workshop, and we will really have an opportunity to go in depth around the entire framework. But what you'll find in the framework, and as it relates to the board having the responsibility of representing the vision and values of the community, all throughout the framework is encouragement that the board go out and listen to the community. And as the board takes action, that the board goes out and shares with the community the work of the board. Internally, there's some recommendations out there that there be no board committees at all. There just be a committee as a whole. That's up to individual boards. But I think as part of this, the conversation that you all will need to have as a board and in consultation with your superintendent is what processes you want to use to make sure that if an item or if areas are in a committee structure, how that information gets reported back to the board as a whole to be prepared for any potential action that the board as a whole will take. Because as we said earlier, individual board members don't have authority. Committees, unless somehow granted, don't have authority. The committee's job is to help the operational functioning of the board and the board's work. And so generally the committee should be reporting back to the board as a whole. And if there's anything that requires action through the agenda planning process, and you'll see earlier some recommendations that we're making around that to make sure that there's clear lines of communication from any committees that you have to action that the board may take or delegate to the superintendent.
Okay, so just to clarify your answer, in your view or in the view of this format, the only communication regarding what's going on in terms of board structure or progress is to be made through the superintendent or the formal communications department? Because that's kind of what I'm hearing.
No, forgive me if,
No, and sorry, Rodney, I don't want you to feel that you need to recap the board structure for me in terms of the subcommittees and their functionality, because you don't. I don't want to hold up the meeting. I just want to know, are you going to, or is there going to be guidance in terms of the communication with the public and what your organization views as best practice?
yes, absolutely on that. And that is in the framework. And moving forward, we'll get an opportunity to reach out to you all one-on-one and collectively, and I'll be able to show you where that is.
And Rodney, I heard you say we would meet at a retreat and we can all go over these things together, right? Is that
Yes.
what I heard you
Yes,
say?
the rest-
Okay.
The
And
rest,
so
the
we
rest-
can kind of work through and develop different language around 2.5.
Understood. Thank you.
Can I just make one point about that? That I do think that there's room for some room for improvement around your board docs. I know that's not a great tool for the public to pull in and get information from, but I really do think there's some robustness that can be achieved with, making sure that anything that is discussed at a board meeting or, going to be presented at a board meeting is posted there in time for board members to get it, receive it, review it, understand and know about it, so that they can share it with the community can see that, so that there's just a much more transparent sharing of information that's going to be discussed and brought to the table during board meetings. Right, there shouldn't be a sort of last minute things that end up
We've gotten a lot
catches
better. since
everybody sort of off guard a little bit. We will get to that in the agenda calendar proposal that we have at the end. So
Thank you for saying that, Leslie. We've gotten a lot better since Dr. Mubenga's been here. We get it about a week early now, so that's great.
Woman Everhart, may I add my 2 cents?
Yes,
Okay.
Dr. Evans Brown, thank you.
So Larry and I are the longest standing board members, and historically, we have always had committees. We have, vibrant board members who come aboard and they have, great ideas about, creating boards that do align with the progress of children. So there's 2 things. There's a committee list, and then there's an ad hoc. When we talk about ad hoc, that includes the superintendent and his responsibility to add a liaison to that particular ad hoc committee. Here's an example. Our suspension ad hoc committee was chaired by board member Cindy McCutcheon. There were other board members on that particular ad hoc. I believe it was Adriana as well as Janita. and Dr. Sharon Brown was assigned by Dr. Mabinga for that committee. All of that is aligned with our goals and guardrails.
Dr. Williams.
So that's an example of an ad hoc. Then we have a committee list that I'm working on. I'll be sending out to the board members in the next couple of days. That will include board members chairing those. So here's an example. Stefan Wright, a new board member, has a framework developed for uh, school safety, for example. So he will chair that. Board member Talia Rodriguez is interested in bilingual education. So all of these things that I'm mentioning are in line with goals for our children. And so that is something that is not going away. And we've always had an opportunity at our board meetings that each chair at least give a snapshot of what that looks like, what they have been doing with that committee. And it's really critical that our community hear other kinds of responsibilities and duties that we are doing.
Yes, so I appreciate that. The one of the things we mentioned earlier, we talked about a policy diet, we talked about a committee diet. What we are recommending is President Brown, as you just mentioned, the list of committees to really go through and just to take the opportunity as you have for new board members, new superintendent, new team, just to take an opportunity to revisit the committees and go through a process that we are more than happy to support you through with really determining the work of the committee that is truly aligned with your role from a governance perspective versus your work that may or may not be falling on the operational side. So I don't have enough familiarity with what your suspension committee may be or some of the other committees that you reference, but ultimately we want to make sure that as you've established these goals and these guardrails that's the focus, and that the board is clearly well versed in what is it that is governance in terms of the board's role and what is it is operational in terms of the superintendent's role. So for example, if the board is charging through his goals and guardrails or other processes for the superintendent to address safety, then the expectation would be that the superintendent is going to bring recommendations to the board around safety and safety policies. I can't really speak to whether or not what you're describing in terms of your board committee, if the board is going, if the idea is that the board would make recommendations around safety practices versus that being something that the board would delegate to the superintendent and maybe through a committee structure uh, that's being vetted. I'm not clear on that, but that's where that committee diet is important. And again, all we're trying to do is to make sure that the amount of time that you all are spending as board members and the amount of time and resources that the staff is spending in support of your work, that it truly can be focused in your area of governance and focus on student outcomes. It's not difficult for one to tie almost anything back to student achievement. What we're really asking you to do is to have priority and focus so that there's greater alignment and support between the board's vision, the board representing the community's vision and the community values, and being able to drive progress around the goals that you've set and adherence to the guardrails.
Thank you, Rodney. Any other questions?
I'll proceed on to section 2.6. This is just a re-identification of your board meetings right now, your practices. You meet monthly on Wednesdays. You have work sessions and regular meetings and special meetings as needed. that the majority of members are required to conduct a quorum for the transaction of business. Right now, you have regular meetings on Wednesdays. It's acknowledging that special emergency meetings of the board may be held upon the call of the president or majority of the board, and the superintendent, what your processes are around that. This is just a re-emphasis on the board transacting its meeting in the public, and that the superintendent is to be present with a few exceptions. We'll talk a little bit more about the public agenda and making sure all items to be discussed and presented shall be posted. So all this aligns with your open meeting laws and your own goals around transparency. I'll pause there. So you have a question or a comment?
Larry, Board Member Scott?
So the special meetings, calling a special meeting, that language is different than what is in our current policy. Right now, the board president or a board majority can call a special meeting. And it doesn't indicate that the superintendent can call a special meeting.
Okay, is it the intent there is that the superintendent would submit a request? Because obviously it's the board's meeting, but what it's trying to acknowledge here that there may be issues that the superintendent is aware of, where he would then approach the board president for the rationale for that meeting, and the board president working with the superintendent would then work with the board in terms of calling that meeting. It's maybe we need to add some clarity there to make sure that it's not just simply saying that the superintendent at will can call together the board. Does that address your concern?
And I just want to be clear, it's not really a concern. It's just indicating that the language is different than what our current policy says, or bylaws it might be.
Leslie, if you're in the document, can you just make a note for us to follow
Yeah,
in that section?
keeping notes in a separate document.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just moving forward, so I already mentioned about the public meetings, board agenda items, presentations posted online, and we'll talk a little bit more in section 2.7 that I know some of you all want to address in terms of a cadence around making sure that information is available to the board through a process to make sure that the board can be informed and prepared prior to your meetings when action is required. Next portion just talks about the majority, you all operate in standard processes around your voting process. Formal votes have to be taken in open meetings and properly recorded in the minutes. Attendance at executive sessions will be permitted to any board member, any other person is authorized or requested to attend by the board. And the superintendent will extend all executive sessions except those that concern his or her evaluation, employment, or salary. And then making sure that your motions as you go into closed session and as you come out of closed session are appropriate and aligned with your law. Okay, board agenda. This one often brings up much consideration. So the principles behind what we've put in place here for the board agenda is trying to make sure that as the board that you all have information in advance in preparation for whether it's a session where you're going to be having discussions or whether it's time for you to take action. The intent is to make sure that in advance, the board has received information, has had an opportunity to review information, has a process for submitting feedback back to the superintendent around what you're receiving, and being able to develop this cadence so that the board knows, the superintendent knows, the public knows in a reasonable amount of time in advance what's on the agenda. And in some cases, as we talked about monitoring, being able to have a monitoring calendar that goes out throughout the length of your timeline and of your goals and guardrails. So that's what it's just trying to address here. Reflect an understanding of effective governments, adhere to your monitoring calendar, which we will work with you on, along with your goals and guardrails to adopt. The consent agenda shall be used for those items where you have agreement, and to the greatest extent possible, be able to use the consent agenda so that operational matters are dealt with hopefully efficiently, and issues that really require the focus and attention on the board in terms of its monitoring and discussions fall on your regular agenda, again with the goal of being student outcome focused. Our advocacy is that over time that the board moves towards effective board moves towards spending at least 50% of its public meeting time focusing on student outcomes. And this is tied to trying to support you in moving in that direction. Right now, we have the agenda shall be circulated via email to the full board by the clerk. The board's meeting agenda shall always prioritize a majority of time progress, monitoring student outcomes, just spoke to that. And also that the calendar shall adhere to this schedule. Again, this is a draft. These are recommendations for you. These are rooted in our framework, in our best practices. But the principles, again, around it are trying to make sure that that as the board president and the leadership team works with the superintendent on planning the agenda for a meeting, that there's a process for you all coming together and having that discussion and being prepared. And you'll note here, prepare any items to be considered at any committee of the board should also be confirmed at this meeting. So that kind of addresses somewhat some of the conversation earlier about committees. We're recommending that the agenda, and this is these are board meetings. These are the meetings belong to the board. These are the board's agenda. This is about the board's work. And so we want to make sure that the superintendent is in a place to be able to provide all the support materials, staff presentations, and other info to the board at least 12 days prior to the next regular board meeting. And then the superintendent would also include any recommendations as part of that require board approval or action. Again, that consent eligible items will be placed on consent. And then a process that when the board receives that information, we want to support an efficient process so that if the board has questions, those questions can be shared with the superintendent. And most importantly, that the board of the whole is in a position to make sure that questions that may arise from one of you is shared with all of you. There's a deep underlying principle in all of this work is that what one board member knows, we want all board members to know. You all function as a unit. You are going to take vote and action. And so undergirding this is trying to make sure that there's clear communication and information for every single board member so that you can be prepared to take appropriate action per the will of the board. Maybe I'll pause there to see if there is any questions about that first part before I get going, because the rest of it is just spelling out a continuation from the 10 calendar days after the board's meeting, the 12 calendar days before the regular meeting, the 7 calendar days before the regular meeting in terms of questions, the 5 calendar days, the superintendent creating a Q&A document back based upon the questions received, and then making sure that the final agenda is made available to everyone 2 days prior.
I had a question.
Board Member Zulich? Thank you.
I just wanted to say 12 days sounds amazing, to have 2 weekends. Just 2 days has made such a difference, going from getting the agenda 5 days before the board business meeting to 7 days, having that full week. I can only imagine how nice having 12 days would be. I do want to say I have a concern. I feel like, I think moving forward, we do want to be more collaborative and communicative. But we moved away from the Q&A, and I feel like it's become less transparent or harder to get the information from each other doing these small group meetings. So if I happen to be in a meeting with one other board member, it took the place of the Q&A kind of. You know, I would have to reach out to 7 different board members to get their take on their small meeting. And I just felt like it was a way to sort of, I felt very separated from my colleagues with that format. But also with the Q&A, I do feel like it was heavily curated. So the questions I submitted weren't necessarily reflected in board docs. And then another thing I'm wondering, I don't know if we put it in here or we just make a request. I would like the board docs notification enabled. Right now it's disabled. And I have found that the information has changed what's available on board docs, but I haven't been notified that something was taken away or something was added. So I think if the board members receive that email notification, it would feel more above board to me. And then my last, going along with transparency, I'm wondering if we could get like a board meeting, board work session, get it out there on Facebook before 2 hours before the meeting. I don't know if we could put some language in there, like, oh, can the Buffalo Public Schools, 2 days, 48 hours before the meeting, post that.
Are you talking about public notice of the board agenda?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we have, there's, that's down in communication, I believe.
Okay. Thank you so much. So
Maybe
yeah,
not. No, it's, yeah.
Okay.
No, it's not in there, but I know there's something in your current about the time period about that. My ask would be for all of you to really consider, from the administrative point of view as well, if you hold yourselves to a real standard of calendaring here with when you receive information, when you are required to submit your questions, like if you develop this, it's a very healthy process. So that everybody knows, okay, I've got this is my time during the month that I'm supposed to read, everything. And knowing that you're not going to get, slide lined in a week about, 5 new things coming on the agenda. So this is a very healthy calendar. I would really hope that you all would consider doing something like this. And again, it just would make everything much easier for the administration to address, much easier for the board to understand and anticipate. And then again, for the community as well. This all will flow out to the community. So.
And, Madam Vice President, I know we are approaching the 5 o'clock hour. What's your recommendation in terms of time or additional time that we may have for me to at least provide some next steps if we don't have time to continue?
1 hour. If you want to continue with this, we can bring that next week.
Okay.
Since we don't have.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you be able to come back next week, Rodney?
Let's see. Next Wednesday, I believe so.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, let me just confirm. Well, in any event, I can work on scheduling that. What I would ask is, and I know that one of the
Well, hold on, Rodney. Maybe I should ask the board members. Do you guys want to continue or?
How much more time do you need, Rodney?
I don't know. I guess the main thing is there was reference earlier in terms of section 5.1.
Thinking of the hour.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, well, I'm sorry, we have a presentation after you, Rodney, so we will
Okay.
have to, it's next week, convene next week.
Okay, well, I will thank you for allowing us to begin this process with you. What I would ask as we are leaving off on from getting things in advance and asking questions, we're going to resend this out to you again, and I would ask that that if you all would take the opportunity to go through it again, and if you have questions, if you can send those questions, to us maybe by close of business on Monday, then we'll be prepared to be able to address any of those concerns or questions that you have as we come back to you.
Right, and if the board members want to go through the policies, they find that on board docs, right? To kind of compare.
Yes, if they want to do
Okay.
that, but again, moving forward, we would be recommending coming back to you to really talk through the whole policy diet question. Right
Yeah.
now, we really just want to make sure, does this represent how you all want to operate based upon your goal of being student outcome focused?
Right. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you, Rodney and Leslie.
Thank
Thank you.
Brad.
Thank you very much for
And
having us.
if anybody wants to go through this individually with either one of us just to get a grasp of what's going on, please do reach out. We would be happy to talk with you before then. Thank you all.
So at this time, we'll be turning it over to Talia Rodriguez for finance and ops.
Hi, everyone. I apologize about my tardiness. Good afternoon and welcome to the BOE Finance and Ops work session. I am Talia Rodriguez and I am the chairwoman of Finance and Ops. Today's agenda covers an updated framework of proposed budget items to alleviate the closure of any schools this year. Once Mr. Barnes completes his budget presentation, board members will have an opportunity to ask questions in which I will facilitate. And I will now turn the meeting over to the superintendent for remarks and to introduce the staff from his cabinet. And I want to thank you all for your participation today.
Thank you, Board Member Rodriguez. Without further ado, I have our CFO here, Chief Bonds, that is going to go through the PowerPoint. Then we're going to toss it back to you, Board Member Rodriguez, to facilitate the conversation. Chief Bonds.
Thank you, Superintendent, and thank you, Talia. I look forward to working closely with you. Congrats to the new board members and Happy New Year to my old friends for another year. So tonight I'm going to talk about school closings within the context of its impact on our budget process and four-year plan. And then I'll tie that into the 26-27 budget process. Tonight, the super and I are just setting expectations for the process based upon the decision of the school closings. Edmure, next slide. So some introductory comments. The 26, because we have 4 new board members too, a lot of this will be new to you. I encourage you to call me, set up training sessions, whatever you need to get us through this. Anyway, the 26-27 budget process is scheduled to begin January 26th. That's when we release the superintendent's annual kickoff memo, along with the budget process packets that we distribute out to every department and every participant in the budget process. Prior to that official kickoff date, we expect to get the governor's proposed state aid budget. That's what really kicks us off. That's what's going to tell us how much money we have to work with next year. And we'll also complete our very important level 1 budget projection. This sort of sets the tone. You got your initial governor's budget. We incorporate current staffing with staff longevity and contract increases, benefit projections, charter projections, and the superintendent has also will by that time provide us some direction on the other expenditure items. We can't do an accurate level 1 budget projection without a decision on school closings. It's too impactful. So, Admir, next slide. Oh, this is a little small, but so the superintendent recommends that no schools are going to be closed in the 26-27 year. We appreciate the time commitment of the committee members, but based upon feedback from the community and other constituencies and various other factors expressed by the superintendent, it's just not the right time to close schools in 26-27. I want to make like a personal comment real quick to commend Sharon Brown for her focus upon the direction given to her by the board in a board rec and her consistency and stewardship during that entire process. This is a delay in the school closing process. The superintendent is working on a new process, utilizing an external source to compile the data, involve input from the city of Buffalo and community groups, and make recommendations to the board. More details will follow. The district will never achieve a balanced budget without school closings and the consolidation of facilities, and it will eventually run out of fund balance. Yesterday, the superintendent and I met with the control board, our external auditors, to discuss this decision and its impact on our 4-year plan. Very quickly, this 4-year plan, which you all have a copy, this is our board approved and control board approved financial plan for 4 years. This is how we are measured, and this is how we plan our operations for a 4-year period. We're a $1.3 billion organization. You need a document like this to guide your finances. It's very similar to what the superintendent's constructed with his strategic plan, but from a financial standpoint. So we met with the control board. We talked to them about no school closings because that was an integral part of the 4-year plan and our financial plan. When you deviate on that large of a scale, you call the control board, you call your external auditors. That's one of the constituencies you discuss. It was a very positive meeting from my perspective. But they are going to hold us to still achieving our fund balance objectives. We're not going to close schools, so what are you going to do to not do that, but still keep your objectives and meet your objectives for your fund balance? We discussed that with them, and we're going to just provide some outlines of that tonight. It is important to note that the 2 other key components of our 4-year plan, they are being implemented. The closure of virtual pathways and the reduction of 100 budgeted FTEs. So, we're in the process of developing a plan B to offset the projected loss of cost savings from not closing schools and to achieve the fund balance targets that are incorporated in our 4-year plan. This includes returning the district to pre-COVID staffing levels. So, Plan B will involve additional FTE and cost cuts and potential revenue enhancements. It will impact every area of the district's operations, including central office, schools, programming, contracts with vendors. The superintendent, as I'll mention in a bit, but it's right on the tip of my tongue as I read that. He's charged the budget department with go top to bottom, every line, every contract, and the old justifications for spending this money, they may no longer apply. So we're taking a fresh look at everything. This decision will also impact union negotiations. It's our largest expenditure. So, Admir, if you turn to the next slide, the 26-27 budget process. Here's our budget calendar. Very hard to read, but you do have a hard copy, I hope. Again, we're a $1.3 billion organization. We're very large and complex, but we have in place a well-documented, clearly communicated, and successful process and procedures for the budget. The time frames and the due dates and the items that incorporate all the different aspects of the budget are included right on this document. I'll just mention a few. Number one, on or about January 15th, the governor releases her budget proposal for our state aid revenues. That sets the tone. About a week after that, now we have our revenues, we'll construct a level 1 budget. This will give the superintendent and his management team and this board an initial starting point. And it's basically saying, what would our deficit or surplus look like based upon our current staffing, our current expenditures, projections for charter schools and benefits, our debt service numbers. It's a starting point, but it's a very valuable one. As I mentioned earlier, on January 26th, the budget process will officially kick off with the superintendent's budget memo, where he just outlines the challenges he sees, how he plans to address them, and what he's expecting from the district in terms of participation in this budget process. Budget packets are released, very detailed, user manuals for every department, every clerical staff that enters budget entry. So that's the official start, January 26th. On about February 6th, we're anticipating the release of the school-based budget books. We're currently doing the enrollments projections for each school. That includes classroom numbers and sizes. All of that's being incorporated into, again, a very detailed, well-documented, successful school-based budget process. I should mention, Rochester and others often call us to incorporate our school-based budget process. So it's tried and true. That's all I'm saying. Training sessions for all staff are done in early February. And then on 3/13, all departments will have entered all their non-staff expenditure requests. This is a bottom-up budget process. So then we have what's called the level 2 budget. That'll be reviewed by the superintendent and this board. And that's a second look at how we could potentially navigate our financial challenges. The school-based budget wraps up at the end of March. And then we really have what's called the level 3 budget. We'll have a final state revenue budget. It's passed by the legislator, not by the governor. We'll plug those numbers in, and then we can really see how it looks. The superintendent will start making decisions on further cuts, use of fund balance, and things like that. The bottom part of this chart is we have to present our budget to the city of Buffalo, to the control board, and to this board for approval. That all happens during the late April, early May. So it's almost a 4-month process. And we'll be kicking it off, you gotta remember the date, January 26th. So I've covered some important topics. Add me the last slide. But I'll just wrap it up this way. We're not closing schools. That's not going to be in the 26-27 budget. But the superintendent has charged the budget team with aggressively looking for additional cost reductions and revenue enhancement opportunities to incorporate and offset the fact that we're not closing schools. I'll just make well, for example, on Monday this week, the superintendent, working with his cabinet, has identified approximately 45 central office positions to be cut next year. Well, that was great work. Some of the best I've seen during the budget process. I think what underlines it is a change in mindset. And I think the superintendent is really pushing that down to his cabinet and his management team. So the successful implementation of what we're calling Plan B, probably not the best, most creative name, it's going to require the board's understanding of these issues as well. And what I mean by that is in our quarterly reports. You should really read them and look at how deficits impact, one, our cash flow statements, but two, our fund balance. That'll give you the perspective to understand a little better what the superintendent is proposing in his budgets. And lastly, it's gonna take all of us working together. So the full support of the superintendent's proposed budget, including during and after the school-based budget process. So. There's the big decision on school closings, and that's where we stand from a budget process, and what to expect. Okay.
Thank you,
Alright.
sir.
Can I make a few comments before, Madam Vice President here? I think that was a really tough decision that, we're able to work with, our team to be able to use different venue instead of closing those two schools. I just want to be really blunt when it comes to how we came up to that decision. So the plan was to be able to capture somewhere around $3 to $5 million if we close two schools. That means the FTE positions in that school, as well as all the operation cost of running those two schools, approximately $3 to $5 million. So I was able to work with my team and say, let's try to look for another way of capturing that $3 to $5 million. That's the work we did. We started with a 45 position that we're able to capture. And some of those positions, they are vacancies. There may be some personnel people that's going to be impacted, but it's going to be minimum. Based on the numbers that I have, probably about 80% is going to be, we're trying to capture some of those positions that they were vacant. And some of those positions that were vacant for 2 years. And having conversations, we said we don't need to keep on posting those positions. We're really proactive. We're able to have conversations with our union because they're going to feel the pains as well, because some of the membership is going to be reduced. I think this is the right thing to do instead of closing two schools and the impact in the community. It was not going to be good at this point. So moving forward, how did we get to that $78 million deficit? Based on my listening and learning that's happened across the nations, when we got all this COVID money as our funds, we added a lot of positions. I think for BPS, we added probably somewhere around 400 positions. And then we're able to cut. We did not cut all 400. We probably cut about 250. And we still had about 150 other positions lingering somewhere. I think I was talking with someone, asked me, are you going to get back to pre-COVID? I said, no, because we have needs, mental needs that we did not have prior to COVID among our students and staff as well. We still need those positions as well. So we're gonna do our due diligence. And when it comes to cuts, we started with my cabinet. I just wanted to show that example. And then a lot of people, a lot of positions going to be impacted at the central office level. Now, if we go to the school level, I remember when I interviewed for these positions, I was doing my research. Our class size was really decent. And I did my tour. I went to all the 60 schools. There are some schools with 6 students in the classroom. So average in the district, we have 1 teacher for 14 students. If we go for 1 teacher to 15, is that decision going to impact student learning? I don't think so. So those are the conversations that we started with central office, and we're gonna have this conversation with our principals as well. If we change our mindset, I think we're gonna be at a good place to be able to capture this $78 million deficit. We cannot run the district with that kind of deficit. I don't know, maybe our other district I've seen some practices where superintendent work with staff, they get a budget in place. Then you may have board members also requesting for additional positions for specific schools. And I'm gonna ask our board as we're starting fresh, if we can restrain from that practices, it's gonna help us to be able to eliminate our deficit and be able to get ourselves in a fiscally responsible district. That's what Jim was trying to say, not trying to articulate that really clearly. We're gonna need cooperation from our board to make sure we're not adding more positions. If we do so, we're gonna get back to ground zero and not being able to have a progress. So I just wanted to make those comments. I don't want us to get to a point where superintendent said we're not gonna close schools, we're gonna be in a good positions, but if we keep on adding positions, we're gonna get back to where we started. So thank you, and I'm gonna pass it back to board member Rodriguez.
Thank you, Superintendent. Colleagues, did you have questions?
Hi, Talia, it's Stefan. I have, I guess, a couple questions and comments about this.
Yes, sir.
Again, thank you for letting me speak.
Absolutely.
So first, I would just like to say, Dr. Mubanga has been real good with communication and things like that about this, these school closures. As some of you may know, I was able to sit in, on the school closure committee because, the Honorable Sharon Cotman appointed me to sit on that committee last year. And I do respect the fact that, we are finding another plan, than to close schools and have the community in the uproar as of for right now. But I kind of like got a couple questions that you can answer at another time but this is some of the questions that the community has, or they're asking me like, why aren't we closing 2 schools right now? Did you not like the recommendation from the committee? Because when we were, as a committee member, when we were in the committee, we were told by some of your representation that whatever the committee would be, actually we was told by your representation, and also some of the board members who sat in as chair people, that whatever the recommendation from the committee, whatever the recommendation that the committee came up with, that you would accept it, no matter what it would be. You would accept it. That doesn't mean that the board would have to vote on it and it would come to pass, but you would accept it. So, we came up with school 90, everybody agreed on, and school 3 came off the woodworks, whatever the case may be. So I knew school 3 might have been a problem to close. And I'm not saying school 90 should have been just focused on and targeted, but like I said, we were told that the recommendation will be listened to, that you accept it, and that you would take it to the board. And I know I like the idea of not hiring more employees, looking at some of the employees that we don't need them to be here. But my question is, when Jim talked about 4 years, I want to know what's the difference in closing 2 schools in a year or in 2 years than right now. If we have a budget issue, we're talking about $78 million. We have a budget issue. We're gonna have to revisit this again. And you put the community in an uproar. From the committee, people really stressed out, from the community really stressed out, parents, students, right before the holidays, right before Christmas or the New Year's, everybody was stressed out. I had personal conversations with Jim, and even in the committee, he said schools has to close. More than 2 schools has to close, should close. You know what I'm saying? This is coming from who we trust with our money. He said that we need to have more than 2 schools closed. So I'm just kind of confused. And lastly, like, what's the plan if we're not gonna close schools? What's the plan to bring students back to our district? Like, we need to have a plan in place to bring kids back to our district. When I was a student on the board, we had about 36,000 students. Now we have about 30,000. So we lost students. It's not your fault. You just got here, Dr. Mubanga, so I can't blame that on you. But what is our plan to bring our students back into our schools? When I'm riding in the car and I got the radio on, I hear great advertisement from charter schools. I ride and see billboard, from charter schools. We got Catholic school and charter schools that have all these great curricular activities and sports and programming and stuff like that. The suburb district have all these nursing programs, all type of stuff. What are our stand as a district, you as a superintendent, that we are gonna do to draw these students back to our Buffalo public school system? Because me as a committee, as a community person, not even as a board member, I don't think it makes sense to have school buildings that can fit close to 800 to 1,000 students, but only only operating with about 200 to 300 students. It just doesn't make sense to me. We get reimbursed or we get paid by the student, not by the building that's open. So if we can consolidate some of these students into closer school buildings where we are saving money and we're not wasting money. And again, the school buildings can be repurposed. We could work with the city of Buffalo to have it as some type of community center, resource center. We don't have to leave the community vacant. I know they was going in the uproar about this with the school in the fruit bill. If that was closed, the fruit bill gonna be gentrified, or it's gonna be this, or it's gonna be that. Who's to say that we can't repurpose that school for another school, community resources, anything? I just think we need to look at this thing, because a lot of people are reaching out to my phone and off the hook all day, from committee members that was on the committee, from parents that was worried about their schools closing. And I know I'm new and I don't have a lot of answers, probably no answers at all, but these is just my questions to you or to anybody that's in charge of this. What is our plan?
All right, thank you, board member Wright. You are right. Let me say this. First of all, thank you for the work that the committee did. I accepted the recommendation. The only thing I did not do, I did not bring it to the board.
Okay.
So your recommendation was really accepted, and we really appreciate the work, the time commitment, and the expertise that was around the table. But at the same time, as you know, as we do this work, we also have to listen to our community. We also heard our community. We heard different versions. I can give you one, and I don't want to quote the person. The question was asked, when you close the schools, then what? Are we going to abandon those schools? Or do we have a plan for those buildings? Some of the questions were asked, I don't think we had answers for those questions, because we've seen some of the buildings that we were able to close in the past, and they still linger there. They are out there in the community. I got to this job, it's been almost 4 or 5 months now, and their recommendation for closing those schools, I did not want to delay it because I knew we have to start with for the budget process. I think the plan was probably to capture, as I said earlier, $3 to $5 million. Now we have a plan that we're going to be able to capture those $5 million. That $5 million is going to be recurring for the 4-year plan? Yes. If we eliminate those positions, that's going to be the 4 years. Whatever $3 or $5 million we're going to capture next year, for the next 4 years, we're going to be in the same place if we did close the 2 schools. But if you look at the plan, were we going to balance the budget, or we're going just to reduce the deficit? The plan was to reduce the deficit so that we won't be relying on the fund balance to kick in about $80 million, probably to get to $30 or $40 million. But eventually the plan is to be able to balance the budget. That's where the conversation is going to happen, to be able to close schools. And I did not want us to do the work. And now at this point, I really felt that we needed an independent group to come and be able to come and give us really robust recommendations, not only to close school for financial reasons, but what are we going to do with those buildings? That's where I would like the city and everybody else to be involved around that conversations, because we are all going to be responsible for it. Sure. But I just really wanted to be clear. I accepted the recommendations. We did not want to waste time of the committee, but based on the feedback we're able to receive from the community and the plan B, working with my staff, we felt comfortable that we should be able to get a saving in lieu of closing those 2 schools.
And I do thank you for your feedback, and I do appreciate the alternate route that you are taking to not close the schools right now. I'm not saying I'm for having 2 schools closed, but I'm just saying the route that you are taking is just for now, and then we're going to probably have to revisit this in a year or 2, and how the community is in the uproar now about 2 schools closing. They're going to do the same thing, whether we bring in somebody to do a survey, not a committee, whether the board handle it. They're going to be in an uproar then too. You know what I'm saying? So that's just my biggest concern, is that you know, I don't want to have the parents not be able to sleep at night again in 2 years because of, we're closing 2 schools or closing 3 schools. You know what I'm saying?
As you know, across the nation, anytime you have to close schools, there are going to be folks that's going to be really upset. And at some points, we have to do that. But I really want to make sure the process is going to be robust, that we need to bring a lot of stakeholders around the table as we're making those decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Wright. Board Member Zulich, Board Member McKeachin had a question and she had raised her hand virtually. I didn't see her. She's joining us via Zoom. Is it okay I call on her and then I'll come back to your question? Okay. Oh, and I'm sorry, Vice President, right? Madam Vice President. Just getting my titles right. Sorry, Board Member McKeachin.
Chair. Thank you, Jim, for your presentation as always. I just wanted to put out a request, just given kind of some of the chaos that ensued at the end of the budget process last year. I know one of the things we just put out there or talked about was the possibility of getting that finalized budget to vote to us before May. I know you listed out a rigorous calendar and all sorts of things that have to happen, but I just wanted to uplift that again. I think receiving that budget, that final budget in May, and being bound to that May board meeting makes it very difficult, and often puts pressure on us as board members to have to make a decision, even if it is one that, you know, does warrant more conversation. And that's just given timing because it bleeds into the new school year. So I just wanted to put that out there again, if that's something that, you know, might be able to be pushed up, even if it is just April, that gives us the opportunity for a whole nother board meeting if there are additional conversations, you know, that might need to be had.
Well noted. I'll review everything and again, it depends on how we get started. So I'll review that and I hear what you're saying. I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you, Board
I'm
Member.
just gonna, oh, sorry. Did you want to call me officially or should I just go?
Well, I was just going to try to get your title right. Madam Vice President Zulich, carry on. Thank you so much. I'm
Thank you.
sorry about the mistitle.
As far as the school closing, I just wanted to tie it into Rodney and Leslie and SOFG. I just want to remind us, board members, whether elected from a district seat or a citywide seat, shall act, not maybe, not could, may, might, shall act as a unified board focused on the improvement of the Buffalo Public Schools as a whole. So I think we could keep that in mind the next time we take on this process. Honorable Wright, we have been having this conversation and it is, I am excited to see what we will do. But I remember tuning in 2 years ago, you know, the sky is falling, we have to right size, we must do this. And then it almost felt impossible, you know, like get together, you have 6 weeks, do it, bam. But yeah, I am very grateful. I mean, for people took PTO, took their lunch, came every week. When we were in Albany, I mean, the committee stepped up and went out to the community meeting. Whether it's the budget, school closings, I do think we can do a better job being more transparent and getting the information out there. I was shocked by how much disinformation and misinformation is out there. You know, like the Buffalo Public Schools do not own any buildings. A lot of people thought we were going to sell off buildings to make money. I mean, just for example. So I think we can have, well, I have ideas, but I would like to get more information out about that. And also things like school-based budgets, the SBMTs. I found this past year, a lot of people came to me when it was too late, or how we had parents come and speak in July. Oh, can we do this for the budget for next school year? We should be having those conversations it looks like, January, February, March, people should be coming and speaking. So I think we're thinking like May, or maybe, I'm not sure what the public might think, the community, but like, oh, that's a recommendation, but that's like, we're adopting a budget. So I would like us to be able to reach out or think about, be mindful of that, to our constituents and to our schools earlier in the year. I did have a specific question, two, I guess. Can you give us some examples of revenue enhancement opportunities? Like, what does that mean? And have we looked into overtime? I don't know if we have a breakdown of where it's going, but that was a substantial amount of money.
Super, can I take this one?
Yes.
I appreciate that. Did you, and Stefan, just flip the side. I'm fully in support, and I think it's a wise decision the superintendent made. But our regarding the financial consequences of us running deficits, this is why I said you need to review the cash flow and the impact on our fund balance, which are produced every 3 months and provided to this board for 3 years. 400 million we started the year at. We were at 500. We were at 450. We lost 50 million last year. Now we're at 400. If we hit the budget this year, it goes down $80 million. Now you're at 320. Next year's deficit, the initial projection, is for 30 million. Now you're down to 220. You have to keep 200 million aside of your fund balance. This is no joke. Our fund balance and our cash flows get depleted dollar for every deficit. As the superintendent clearly just phrased it, we're projecting going from $78 million deficit to a $30 million deficit. That's still a $30 million deficit, which is a dollar for dollar drain on your cash and your fund balance. The only way this district can ever achieve an actual balanced budget, is to close schools and consolidate our facilities. Our classrooms, 80% of them have less than 20 kids in them. We have the same amount of buildings as we did when we had 4,000 more students. So this is happening all over New York State, all over the country, but you do not want to wait until your fund balance reaches a critical level. And the biggest financial drain on us is because the super's addressing the personnel issues right this year, is the overcapacity in our schools and having classrooms with less than 20 kids in them. I can't stress that enough as your financial thing. Regarding your last 2 points, yes, the superintendent is very focused on the overtime issue, but we should also understand what is in overtime. The majority of the overtime is at BTF 1-200s for programs like summer school and after school programs. Then we know that there's about 5 or 6 departments that we're focusing on to reduce that number. But this district could not operate without overtime. We tend to sometimes oversimplify things or generalize, and you get an agenda and you go after it. The superintendent is very circumspect about the overtime. We're breaking it down and focusing on those areas where we can save $3-4 million. And revenue enhancement, I'm sorry if I'm taking it up too much time. Guess we should say I will provide you a list of 10 items that over the past 5 years have generated in excess of $20 million in additional revenue. And I've reported this to the board within quarterly reports, within end of year summaries. I know, but I think we've been very communicative, but it doesn't seem
Is
to.
it like our food service, for example, or off the top of your? Okay.
No. give me three. Invoicing to other districts for services our staff perform, number one. Scrubbing of ELL and special ed data and submitting revised SAMS forms that generate extra foundation aid. The list goes on. So anyway, I've said enough. Sorry, Sue.
Can you produce it via email, send it to all board members?
Absolutely.
No, I understand it's not sustainable to keep on this road. But also, as I've said, not to be penny wise and pound foolish. Like I think sometimes we're not thinking about the long term or unintended consequences, like when we went from 611 to 811s. I think sometimes you're like, okay, we're gonna save this money.
Sure.
And I do wonder if it's just long term, we ended up spending more.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Colleague, I'll call on you in 1 second. I know Board Member Bowen had a question, and Board Member Hawkins, I see your hand. I'm sorry, I can't see your face. Board Member Bowen, did you want to continue?
Thank you, Talia. And thank you, Jim, for providing us all this new information for us new board members. But I have a question of, it's January 7th right now. What happens on January 15th? We don't get the money we want.
No, I think good question. We have a long track record, we have trend analysis, and we also have initial indicators from the state based on our prior CM submissions, our enrollments, our sped counts. We have that initial number. The governor's proposed budget usually is pretty close to those initial numbers, except in cases where there's a state emergency and they're slashing the education budget. So we have a good indicator. But you know, in my line of work, you don't believe anybody until you see the report, you see the dollars.
So we have to revisit this if we do have bad news?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yes, to be honest, yes.
And then,
I think it was 5 years ago, state cut our aid $25 million. That's not gonna, well, yes, we would have to revisit it if that happened.
all right, and then for the superintendent, are we as board members going to be able to see the recommendation from the committee?
Yes, we'll make it transparent. I got a report from Chief Braun.
Okay,
We'll be able to send the email to you all. What was the recommendation?
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Bowen. Board Member Hawkins, do you want to continue, sir?
Yes, and thank you so much, Board Member Rodriguez. Our questions for Superintendent and CFO here. I have a series of questions. K-3 is a big issue. Now I know I scammed over the 4-year plan just briefly, but it intrigued me to ask a few questions in regards to that. How much are we spending per student below grade level in K-3, and how has that changed year over year?
Yeah, I'll get you the information. Yeah, I don't have it on me right now.
You speak up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have that information to answer your question right now, we can get it for you.
Okay, all right, my next question, and you talked about it earlier. Budget lines, they're strictly tied to really improving the literacy outcomes versus general staffing.
I'm sorry, would you repeat your question?
Which budget lines are directly tied to improving literacy outcomes versus general staffing?
I would have to see you offline and understand the question better and then gather that data for you.
But I'll say this, that's a question that Chief Batticelli can provide. And we also have additional support from federal funds, Title I as well. That is a supplement to the needs of academics as well. So we should be able to provide that. I think Chief Batticelli will be the right person to be able to break it down for you.
Okay, and I have some more.
Yeah.
I have questions. Like I said, I reviewed the package just briefly and just prompted me to ask a few questions in regards to it. We all know that there's an attendance problem, right? Attendance staffing has declined while attendance remain a challenge. So what is our return investment on those attendance interventions?
All right, that's a good question. And again, as I'm completing my 100 days, I've learned a lot of things, and I'll be giving out my reports. And I think the good thing that we're gonna do is starting in February, that's where we're gonna have a strategic plan development, and we're gonna have all the data, quantitative and qualitative, and all the feedback that we got from town halls And we should be able to consider all those as we're going to develop our strategic plan.
Excellent. I said, I want, Mr. Barnes, how much additional state aid would a 1 to 2% increase in attendance would that generate?
State aid is not based on attendance, it's based on enrollment. Sales tax from Erie County is based on attendance. We get about $60 million a year in sales tax revenue from Erie County. That is based on attendance.
Okay.
By the way, we call it sensitivity analysis. What if it goes down 4%? What if it goes up 3%? So I can get you whatever you need.
Yes, sir. Now, if staffing were aligned strictly to enrollment, what reductions would naturally occur?
Super sure. I can give you a general answer.
I think the formula is not that simple. As we're gonna go do the budget process with schools, with ASL being their principals, and the needs of the schools are different. There are schools that are struggling, they're probably getting additional money with Title I as well. So the formula is not that simple. It's a conversation that needs to happen, and we have to look historically how much we're able to give, and then based on the needs that we have in this year, how we need to make those adjustments. So that's pretty much open conversation with school leaders.
Excellent. And what percentage of the general fund FTEs are classroom direct versus administrative or support?
I'd say it's a 3,200 out of about 5,600. I'll get you that number too.
Okay, excellent. And lastly, what programs supported by the reserves would disappear once the reserves are exhausted?
The reserves are exhausted, it means we can't make payroll. It's much more dramatic than you think. So you gotta monitor it. When you approach a point of concern, you gotta stop and reassess your operations and your budgets.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. I'll say this, other questions or additional requests that we're having, we'll make sure that we send it to all board members.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your diligence and your preparation, Board Member Hawkins. Madam Vice President, did you have a question or did you want to move on?
Yes, I just want to ask, Plan B, now is that going to balance the budget and for how long?
It's not going to balance the budget.
Okay.
I think when you look at the 4-year plan, we want to get to pretty much somewhere around $30 million deficit. Closing the 2 schools was going to be about $3 million to $5 million.
That was a
So yeah, the plan B pretty much capturing the same amount.
Okay. Okay, so then we would be out of the deficit, right?
No, we'll still be in a
35
deficit.
million. Okay, so
The deficit now is about $78 million.
Right.
Based on the 4-year plan, we really want to start getting somewhere around $30 million, which
so
is
closing 2 schools would have done that.
yes,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then after closing 2 schools, how would we have balanced the budget if we had
Yeah.
closed the 2 schools now?
Right. So
I'm sorry.
closing 2 schools along with the other measures, virtual pathways, FTE reductions, only got us down to a $30 million deficit.
Got it.
And the control board and external others and the state, how they monitor us is your fund balance.
Mhm.
So they were okay with a $70 million deficit this year and a $30 million deficit next year, because that resulted in a $274 million fund balance at the end of next year.
Right.
Now we changed our plans. We think we're gonna still hit that fund balance target at the end of next year, but we will still have a stubborn $30 to $40 million deficit.
Mhm.
That's where additional facility consolidations will have
Right,
to occur.
yeah, so in other districts like Rochester, they just closed 11 schools,
Right.
so eventually we will still need to have more than 2 schools closed.
Yeah. That's the plan.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Madam President had a question. Mr. Hawkins, or School Board Member Hawkins, I'll come right back to you. Madam President had a question.
I do. Thank you, Chief Barnes, as always. And thank you for your presentation. I guess this is an added question to Vice President Janita. Janita's comment. So it sounds like, and I know Chief Barnes, you have always said school closings would help with the deficit. Because it is happening not only in New York State, but across the country. People are grappling with this issue. The question I have is, and we need to be transparent to the community, that we aren't closing schools for this year, but we still need to revisit the issue of closing schools. And I know, Dr. Mabenga, you have plans for having experts come in and doing some mapping across the district. We do have schools that have low enrollment. Somebody mentioned it. A school that could easily accommodate 800 students, and they may have 200 right now. So you have to look at consolidations, you have to look at, a number of variables to right size the district. And so I think in our transparency, we need to say that, because it sounds like right now we're just putting a Band-Aid on the fact that we have a $78 million deficit. So when I came on the board, and Larry remembered this as well, in 2019, we always had a deficit of at least $30 million. Right now, it sounds like it has doubled, and that's where the issue lies, correct?
The issue really lies on the impact of deficits on our fund balance. I can't stress that enough. Fund balance, you could sort of translate to how much cash do you have on hand. We lost $30 million last year. That reduced our cash by 30 million. Reduced our fund balance by 30 million. This year, if we hit budget, we'll lose another 80 million. Your fund balance is dropping to a level that could be concerning, if not reduced or fixed. And I'm sorry, the superintendent and I were talking about this earlier. We were running surpluses for 7-8 years. For 3 of those years, it was largely due to the assistance of ARP-ESSER. When ARP-ESSER ended, we lost all that revenue, but we maintained the expenditures of 150 employees. Charter schools went up, benefits went up, and last year, largely because of the 150 FTEs and other programs, about 10 million in ARP-ESSER programs we maintained in the general fund, we had our first deficit in probably 9 years.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, kid.
Board Member Hawkins, and then we can go to Board Member Wright. And then I might have a question. So I just want to note that at some point. I'm really excited to facilitate. Board Member Hawkins, can you carry on?
Yeah, because I'm probably for all us new board members on the deficit and dealing with $1 billion budget and how we got to from always being around 30 million to now that number doubling. Were we banking on something, budget wise every year that counted that we didn't get?
Right. No, we ran surpluses for 7 years.
That's right.
Our first deficit that we incurred was last year, and that's because we didn't cut all of the ARP-ESSER related expenditures. We shifted a portion of them to the general fund. 150 staff members, about $10 million in programs that were started during ARP-ESSER. They were supposed to end when ARP-ESSER ended. Mm-hmm. We didn't cut them all. We moved them to the general fund. So that's the reason for the $78 million projected debt. The superintendent is now focused on those ARP-ESSER, bringing it down to pre-COVID levels or thereabouts.
But why was it moved instead of just exhausted, I guess. Why was it moved? If
You want to talk about political pressures?
That we had to get rid of it, why push the can
The
down?
board would not approve it. Frankly, the superintendent didn't propose it fully, and the board would not approve it. And to me, if we're talking honestly, the board actually added 100 FTEs after the school-based budget process was completed, exacerbating the problem.
So how can we as a new board fix that problem?
Dr. Rubanga just said, don't ask to hire anymore.
Good job, Dr.
Good job, Cal.
And can I go real quick, Taya? I just want to circle. Oh, can I? I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to note for our colleagues that Board Member Scott has a question. So Board Member Wright, if you want to carry on, and then we'll have Board Member Scott ask his question. And then Board Member Scott, you remain unmuted. I don't know if you know that or not, but I just wanted to let you know.
And so I just have a quick comment. It's going back to the Dr. Brown that said, the news broke out today that no schools are being closed down. Few schools not being closed down, no schools are being closed down. And I wrote this down, what's the difference of closing school now or next year? We still gonna have to close some schools down. Sure. 2 schools, 3 schools. I remember Jim said the district could sustain closing 7 schools if we had to. Didn't you say that? If we had to, the district could sustain closing like 5 or 7 schools, right? So I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just, you was being, we need to save money. So I just don't want the community. I just don't want, us to put the message out there that no schools are being closed down. We're gonna not hire and we're gonna be good. And then next year, we're in the same process. We want to look at the recommendation that the committee put forth. We want to see why they put that forth, and like I said, I respect Dr. Mubang and I love what he's doing. I just don't like when we are playing with people's emotions and on their heartstrings. It might not be school 90, it might not be school 3 right now, but in next year, 2 years, it's gonna be schools being closed, and my board phone and my email gonna be blowing up. People gonna be hitting my Facebook and pulling me over on the streets, and
It's always gonna be a very emotional, triggering experience.
so that's why I said, what's the difference in doing it now and then waiting next year or 2 years? That's just my biggest concern or question. If we had a committee and the committee was to hear and they did a recommendation, whether the both schools, or we could even had the committee go back and say, hey, you're not going to accept this one school, look at another school. You know what I'm saying? We could have did it so many other ways, but to just ignore that for right now and then say, hey, we're going to have to close. We're not going to hire, but we're going to have to close schools next year or 2 years. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry, it don't make sense to me.
Thank you, Board Member Wright. Board Member Scott?
So I know we're running out of time, but Chief Barnes alluded to it. Just for a better understanding, we had this influx of federal funds as a result of COVID, and that stopped. And that's where we are now. We're running surpluses, as Chief Barnes indicated, but that's where now, without that funding and then adding all those positions, we are trying to then close or make up for the lack of federal funding that we're no longer receiving. But Chief Barnes, I just want you to, and I know staffing is the biggest increase for the deficit, but also we began or expanded our contracts with vendors as a result of that federal stimulus. And that also is something that we need to continue to revisit in reducing or considering for reduction in closing the deficit.
Larry, you're right on, and one of the charges from the superintendent was review of the contracts too, every one of them. But you're right, probably 5 to 10 million in contracts grew during the ARP ESSER period. That, questionable if they're still needed.
And I'll just close with this in regards to the school closures. I've said it a few times. It needs to be, it's a very, obviously it's emotionally trying for so many people. And in my opinion, it's going to be no matter what. But I think if it's systematic and it's methodical, it can, I think, reduce the pain that it causes. And I think that's something that we need to fully consider moving forward with closing schools.
Thank you, Board Member Scott.
Thank you, Chairwoman Rodriguez.
Thank you for using my title. Do any of my colleagues have any other questions? Because I wanted to make a comment myself and pose a question to you, Chief Barnes. Okay. So just in response to some of the questions about the timing for school closure, I just want to note that for some of the constituents in the West Side, they had their school closed in Puerto Rico. And when we were explaining what receivership was, there was a lot of emotional fear. So Chief Barnes, one of the questions I'm wondering and kind of alluding to some of what my colleagues are noting in terms of the level of urgency and emotion is whether the district has ever produced any. Have you or has your office ever worked with the communications department to create any visuals so that we could have a reference to kind of explain all of the different costs of maintaining a school building? And then the other thing I'd like to suggest to my colleagues as a whole is that we adopt operational comparisons. So Chief Barnes, pointedly, my question was going to be, are there any districts our size that are running at a balanced budget in New York State? And if there are, can we continue to talk about our district alongside their operational procedures? Is there a way that our board can adopt operational examples so that we're not specifically just talking about our condition, but that we're looking at similarly sized districts and understanding if balancing the budget is a financial reality in today's time?
Good questions, good observations. I can get you any data you want, classroom sizes, building maintenance cost, etc. And I'll work with you on getting that and reviewing it with the super before we send it along. Secondly, what you're talking about is like KPI statistics and metrics. We do participate with the big five and some of that. And I can work on producing some of that data for you. And then lastly, I don't know about the deficits and surpluses of all other districts. I do know that we stack up or always exceed the other districts in terms of fund balance. Now we're jeopardizing it somewhat with our deficits.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Colleagues? Okay. Madam Vice President or Madam President, do you want to move to close?
Okay. So thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you to Rodney and Leslie for your presentations. And thank you, Chief Barnes, for your presentation. Adjourn? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,